This Guitar Interactive magazine feature is brought to you by Ernie Ball Strings. For more information, visit ernieball.com.
Okay, so Steve, absolute pleasure to see you once again. You're back with the original G3 lineup, and you guys have got the Reunion Live record coming out in January. Look, this has got to feel like deja vu for you.
Yeah, I've been so lucky. So many great projects that have come through my career, and the G3 is definitely a little blessing, every time it comes. It's a great tour. I get to play with just such incredible musicians, and I've been on a lot of them, a lot of the G3 tours, and we've released G3 has released 3 records, and I've been a part of those records, and now this will be the 4th.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a fantastic record. Deciding what you play on these tours has obviously changed dramatically over the years, from like the '96 version to now. I mean, your back catalogue has just increased exponentially. Is that a big challenge when it's part of a collection of artists like this? Because when you can do your own shows, you could go for you go for. Steve, at this point, you go for 5 hours and still not play the same thing twice. But, when you're trying to make it work with the other 2 guys' sets, is that a challenge for you?
Well, everything's a challenge, whether, to a degree. But be it you're on a solo tour or you're on like a beat tour, which I'm on now.
Of course.
I'm part of a band. Or G3 or Generation X. But when you have exciting challenges, it makes for a whole different experience. But sort of dysfunctional challenges, there's not really a lot of those. I mean, for the G3 tour, it's always a pleasure. I get to tour. I don't have to be the one navigating the whole thing, meaning the business.
Yeah.
We got a great business team in place. It's nice having an executive decision, like having someone like Joe who shares everything. But sometimes you need somebody that's in the mix that's just like, okay, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And that's nice. I don't have to do that. And I don't have to play a full set. Of course, I like playing full sets, but I'm totally okay doing, I think G3 it can vary, but I think on this one, it was like a 45-minute set. It's nice.
Sure.
You go out there, bam, and you get an incredible crew. They swap things over, and then we get to jam at the end. It's piece of cake, man. I'm sorry.
Well, let's peel the curtain back a little bit, because obviously you and Joe go back way further than G3 does. But you're coming off Fire Garden around about the time where the phone call comes through. What is that? What happens? Does Joe just call you up and say, "Hey, look, I got this idea to put this together with a couple of guys, and I want you on the team"?
Yeah, that was pretty much it. I mean, we talk a lot, and then he called me one day and he explained it, and I said, let me think about it. Yes. It was a no-brainer for sure.
Yeah. Well, when I spoke to Joe last week, he was he was saying that obviously he's a huge fan of Eric, just as you were, but his first choice was actually having Alan Holdsworth in the lineup. Is that something that you remember at the time as well?
No.
Yeah, he said apparently he wanted
I never
him
knew
on
that.
there.
That's the first I heard of it.
Well, I'll take that. I'm happy. That's made my life that I've told you something that Joe told me that I'm telling Steve Vai as a super fan my whole life. That blows my mind. But yeah, apparently he was shopping that around, and just tour promoters they were coming off the back of a
let me clarify
loss.
something. He may have told me, and I don't remember, but I've got a good memory, but it's short. So go on, I'm sorry.
Well, apparently there was, one Alan Holdsworth's tours hadn't done so well, so they just kind of put the kibosh on it, and he needed.
Yeah, that would have been fantastic. I mean, it would have been good, but it would have been a little odd, I think, only because Alan is a very individualized type of a player. you know, and he has a particular sound and a particular approach. He's my favorite guitar player. I mean, you know, when people ask me, who's the greatest guitar player, which is a ridiculous question, you know, it's not like sports. And then you have to go into this big, you know, ideologue about, well, it's a personal preference and blah, blah. There's no such thing as the best guitar player. Now I just say Alan Holdsworth, you know, so, or Tommy Emmanuel, you know, very different. But I think it would have worked, but it would have been a very different kind of a dynamic because I'm more of a campy rock and roll, shreddy kind of a guy, and Joe's more classic rock and, you know, and Alan is just in his own part of the playground, man. There's nobody that even, there's nobody that think like him, you know? So it would have worked, but I think Eric was more appropriate.
Absolutely, and you've had all these different combinations over the years, the ones that you've been involved in, some that you haven't, but you know, the majority are there, and it's all the different flavours, and of course, Eric, what he's bringing to the table is unbelievable. Just working with these guys during that tour, and of course I think you did another one like maybe in South America with the three original guys all got back together, and of course now it's just happened there. You know, you hear these guys night after night, you're enjoying their music. You know, is there a track that stands out for you from both of them that you think, I wish that was one in my back catalogue?
Well, I'm very content with my own music. I like it better than everything else. Why not? You should.
Of course.
But there's a lot of music that I love. Those guys have fantastic songs, the kinds of songs that resonate with me because they're all about melody. You know, Joe is a melodic genius. You know, I mean, I really feel that he's got a limitless well of inspired melody within him. So if I was to think, I've seen them play all different songs, but watching Eric play Manhattan, so beautiful. I mean, he's just got such an elegance and tone. And he takes such care of every note. You know, like if you ever watch him play his chords, every time he hits a chord, every note has its own little zip code. You know, it just goes, I'm like, wow. But the way he navigates that song and the melody is just beautiful. And Joe, you know, I've seen so many. There's that song Crying that Joe does. It's pretty remarkable piece of music. And when I watch him play it, I see a human expressing himself beautifully and authentically through an instrument, through melody, through touch, through control. It's transparent, it's seamless, and it's just profoundly beautiful.
Absolutely, you couldn't have put it any better, Steve, and that's always what I expect from you. Look, as you mentioned, you're out on the road with Beat at the moment. You're doing these 80s King Crimson tracks, just incredibly. We haven't had that over here in the UK, but obviously we get to enjoy little bits that make their way onto YouTube and what have you. What's been what's been the biggest challenge of going through these Robert Fripp parts and adding that to your arsenal?
The music itself was very attractive to me because I love high information music that's accessible. You know, and those three King Crimson records, they were monoliths. You know, they're unique at the time. And they ushered in a whole new dimension of what the definition of prog consists of. And of course, Robert Fripp was just a complete master. And he's developed his own approach, his own sound, and he has unique creative brain muscles, you know, and his parts in those Crimson songs are just brilliant, you know, the way that him and Adrian created those interlocking polymetric moving parts. It's just so beautiful. So the vast majority of the stuff is totally, you know, within my purview. You know, I could play it all. There was a couple of passages that were just outside of my wheelhouse that I kind of reconnoitered a bit, like frame by frame. There's that relentless cross picking thing that Robert does, and I could do it, but it just wasn't. I wasn't confident in the consistency. I couldn't play it perfect through its relentlessness. I'm sure when I was younger, I probably could have done it, but so I kind of brought it into my own wheelhouse by tapping a section, which was actually recommended to me by Robert. He wrote to me after the second show and said, for frame, because I was doing a double picking thing, it was working, but it wasn't great. And I thought about doing the hammering part, but I thought it would take it too far out. And then Robert wrote and said, no, I would like to make a suggestion. Why don't you hammer the notes and then take it into a improv and then move it when the next chord change. And I'm saying like, yeah, of course. And I did it that night, and it was the third show, and it was so much easier, and it was totally in my wheelhouse. So that works.
That's incredible to know that he reached out like that. Was that just without any prompting? Was he just keeping an eye on things and decided as a
we've
friend?
been communicating, through a lot of this, and he's been very helpful, very supportive. And but there was another piece. What am I? Elephant Talk. There's another weird picking thing that was just out of my wheelhouse, and I just wanted to. I could do it, but it wasn't. I wanted to bring something that was me, but retained the integrity of the notes. So the only other thing I really changed was the way I play Robert's part, a few of his parts on Elephant Talk. I just made them more me. They're the same notes. But the other stuff it's fun. It's challenging. Something like Three of a Perfect Pair. It's just a obtuse kind of a guitar riff, and I have to practice it for a while every day before I go out on stage. Lark's Tongue and Aspics Part 3 is that intro is just uncanny, and the way they do it is they only play the last 4 bars or 8 bars or something of Robert's solo intro, which is probably one of the most challenging picking exercises I've ever heard. Again, it's relentless and it's just obtuse, Yeah. So I figured out how to do it with my fingers, and that's fine. I love playing stuff like Neil and Jack and Me, with those. It's totally within my. I don't think I've screwed it up even once on this tour. The interlocking guitar parts, and it's just so great. And things like. Okay, so you asked for a challenge, though. Some of the challenges were, I was quasi familiar with guitar synthesizers, but with beat, I really had to dig in and own it, So I got the Roland SY 1000 and the Roland GM 800. And one of them, the 800 is more like a sampler, and the 1000 is more like a guitar synthesizer. So I really had a ton of fun creating these synth patches. There's a piece called Industry, and I get to do a cloud solo. It's so much fun. It's so different than what I've done before, but it's just very fulfilling. The other challenge, one challenge for me was, just finding my space in the band, because I haven't been in a band for decades. I've been in bands, but not like this. Matter of fact, I don't think I've been in a band like this since high school, where I'm actually a member. The past 35 years, I've been the master and commander of my own ship. I call every shot. I conduct the rehearsals. I dish out the parts. I make all the decisions for the tour. I do everything. And I'm good at it. I move fast, and I know how to ask the right people who are doing their responsibilities. And then all of a sudden I'm in a situation where I'm a band member. And that was great because it was a break from standing in front of a stage playing melodies and solos all night. Now I get to stand on the side, and we have Adrian, who is just phenomenal up front. I mean, the band, the guys are just fantastic, and so when you come to a beach show, you get to see me work. I got to really work.
Well, that's it. It definitely seems like everyone is just super inspired by everyone else, and of course,
it's just,
that
it was one of those things that fell from heaven.
What just the call itself happening, or the music, or from what aspect?
The way the tour is turning out, the way it turned out. Just the music, the fans, the capacities. I mean, the first leg just sold out in like a day or so.
Yeah, you've got to bring it here, Steve. We want to hear some of that over here as well, please.
Well, we're hoping to conquer the world eventually.
Well, I know you've got a busy year coming up, so we might have to wait. Just when you mentioned that there with the picking patterns and some of the stuff, like it being like just like solid picking and what have you, it just did spark something in my memory. I mean, we're going way back, but obviously, like the Crossroads movie that you were involved in, playing the Jack Butler part, what have you. None of that works, of course, unless you have that incredible piece of music that you create at the end and perform it and what have you. Something that I've always kind of wondered is, obviously it's quite heavily Paganini inspired and what have you, but it's super heavy picking. And at the time, it wasn't something that you were massively doing at the time. What made the decision that you felt that it needed to be that style where it was heavily picked? And I also wondered, was the fact that you were sort of coming out of Alcatraz at that time and there was the Malmsteen stuff, were you adding more picking to your arsenal because of that? Or am I just imagining things?
No, when I was young and I started practicing, I practiced picking. I practiced alternate picking. At that time, I know this sounds odd, but at that time, things like sweep picking was not popular. Hybrid picking, I knew nothing about. And economy picking, where if you go from one string to another and then you pick and then you do this kind of thing. That was completely out of my wheel. I couldn't do that. I may have practiced it if I thought about it, but I always felt you got to pick the notes. When I went to Berkeley, there were some great guitar players. There was this one guy, Lorne Lieber, and he picked every note and in all these shapes, and it was amazing. So I focused on that. And then when I joined Frank's band, you have to play the music the way it's written. And most of it's you pick, there's not a lot of slurs. There's, that kind of thing. So I developed that up, down, up, down, up, down. So when it came time to do Crossroads, I read the script and it called for a piece of music that was going to beat the devil's guitar player. And the clincher was that Eugene had classical chops. So I thought I got to write something that goes from something that's identifiably classical sounding into something that's blue, sort of rock, bluesy. That's what it called for. But I also knew because it was a film, people have to see it and it's a guitar duel. It's got to look really impressive, So I wrote these things that went like this, but it's all picked. Alternate picking every note, because that's what I did at the time. And I had pretty good chops for it. And perhaps if I was to know what I know now, I may have done some hybrid picking, but I don't think so, because hybrid picking, it doesn't sound the same. There isn't any picking that sounds exactly like up, down, up, down, up, down. So that's the effect I wanted. So that's what I did.
Oh, well, absolutely played to perfection, of course. Now, I think it was just last month, you put up a post, sort of mentioning, I'm sticking, by the way, this whole interview, there's a wee bit of a theme talking about your collaborations, just because, we're focused on the G3 thing. So I wanted to kind of like pick a few bits through your career, because you've had so many collaborations over the years, but, I couldn't help but notice that when you put the thing up, the kind of almost like failed attempt really at the David Lee Roth reunion that happened 9 years ago. And I wondered if you could give us the full story on that, and how close actually were we to this happening?
Well, I gave the story on a recent post. It describes everything. I was standing there. I was going to hit the first chord, and we were going to take off, and somebody came to me and said, they're kicking everybody out. They're shutting the place down. The fire marshal is here. You're way over capacity, and there's thousands and thousands of people in the street. And I'm like, no, I'm going to play. I'm going to play. And he's like, you'll be fined. And I said, okay, fine me. I'll pay it. How much is the fine? And the guy goes, really? And I said, yeah, I'll pay the fine. So he runs away, and he comes back and he goes, the fine is $5,000. And I'm like, okay, great. Here we go. And he said, but you'll also, the place will shut down. They'll lose their license if you play. They're pulling people out now. And also you can go to jail, you know? So the club owner can get in a lot of trouble. So at that point, what am I going to do? You know,
there's too many people going to suffer. Was there any
better? It worked out. We got more press out of the fact that we didn't play than if we did, because it was true. I went backstage. I went back right after I decided not to hit that chord and start the show, and I said to Dave, I said, "You're not going to believe this. We can't play. The fire marshal's kicking everybody out." And he goes, perfect. We'll get more press out of it than if we played. And sure enough, it was on the cover of newspapers around the world. It was the funniest thing. And, you know, it was all over. It was fantastic, you know, that we got shut down by the fire marshal because there was too many people, which was true. It was crazy.
But why did it never eventually happen then, you know, in a setting that we some music could have got played?
There's a lot of logistics involved when you try to pull these things together. You know, you have, you know, my schedule is written for the next 2 years, you know?
Sure.
And I don't want to go back, you know what I mean? I love Dave. I learned so much from him, but it would feel like a regression. I mean, you know, David Lee Roth beat. It's beat because it's fresh and it's new. And I like that music that I did with Dave, but I don't pine for the glory days of yore.
Of course, no, that, you know, makes perfect sense.
Yeah. I've been asked a lot, you know, would you ever join a supergroup? And my stock answer has always been, you know, no. I get offers, but it's wanting to relive the past, and I always felt that if somebody came along that, you know, had a very creative interest and wanted to do something that was innovative, not necessarily commercial, but accessible, good music, when it's very creative people that just want to do something fresh, I would be interested, but nobody's knocking on my door. I mean, you know, and then next thing I know, Adrian Belew calls, and it was exactly what it's the only kind of super group I could ever consider. And it's nice for now, but, you know, I'm a solo artist.
Of course you are. You know, it makes perfect sense, and everyone wants to hear new music from you all the time. I mean, obviously, right now, in fact, I will just jump onto this and chance my arm, because, again, speaking with Joe, he was quite forthcoming with the fact that this album is happening between the pair of you. Obviously, you've got a couple of tracks that are ready, and there's no title just yet. Can you share anything more?
It's something I've hoped for my whole life. You know, Joe and I have, you know, we've been joined at the hips. We've toured together. We've played together. We've been on records together, but we've never formed a little band and wrote music together. And it's been going great. It's a lot of fun. It's very creative. It's nice to work with a friend like that because I don't collaborate usually, you know. I usually hear something in my head and I get out of the way, you know. But I am a good collaborator when it comes to a specific project that's designated as a collaboration. I could be very good at that. I've done it a lot in the past with, Whitesnake Roth,
Of course.
lot of things. But when it comes to my personal records, my goal is to create a catalog of music that's relatively undiluted, for better or for worse. Doesn't matter. I don't mind because I just like making the music that I hear. And what I'm hearing now is so different than anything that I've ever done or I've ever heard. It's frustrating. It's a little frustrating because it's so compelling.
Okay.
You just want to stop everything you're doing and go do it. But these other things are so much fun too. I mean, I would never miss an opportunity to work with Joe like this. It's fantastic.
Oh, well, we can't wait to hear it, that's for sure. And obviously,
Yeah,
you guys
there's
are
some
bringing the tour over
great
here.
stuff, man. I'm telling you, there's some really cool stuff.
Can you even give us an idea, like how have we got more than half a dozen tracks ready at the moment? Even more than that?
I think we have 3 tracks that are, well, one that's already finished and mixed and released, which is Sea of
course.
Emotion. And
Sure.
then we have Sea of Emotion Part 2 and 3, which are, they're done. They're not mixed. But we've probably got about 8 or 9 other things in the building mode right now. And we're, I just, right before this interview, I texted, I wrote an email, showing him certain things and set list ideas and stuff like this. So we're working together.
Incredible stuff. Can you tell us a little bit about stepping into the studio with Public Image Limited? Because I haven't heard you talk too much about that over the years, and that's obviously quite was a very different kind of project to get involved in. What's the kind of brief for like when you're working on like a track like Rise?
Well, Bill Laswell was producing Leiden, and they were making a Pill record, but they were taking a little different approach. It was basically, a lot of the tracks were inspired by African music, African grooves, beats. Laswell was a big fan of that. So we got like Ginger Baker and some great musicians. And there was another guitar player that was working on the record named Nicky Scopolidis. And he had done some of the rhythm stuff. But Bill and I had a mutual friend, Cliff Coltrari, and Bill called me and said, "Hey, you want to do this?" And I was in a Alcatraz tour, and they were in New York at Electric Ladyland. So I had to fly in, and I only had 2 half days to do all the guitar stuff. And it was a great project. I had total freedom. And I love, I loved Leiden and his contribution, But what was nice was, so what was the song you mentioned? Rise?
Well, Rise or any of the tracks on the record. I mean, it's obviously
I didn't hear the stuff until I got to the studio. So I would just, I would take a listen, and then I go, okay, I think about it. And some stuff had to be worked out, but then I just would blow through the solo. It all happened in like a half a day, and it was great because, again, I didn't have to worry about anything else. I didn't have to go over and change the tape or hit the buttons or anything. And I remember one track, I can't remember which one it was, but Laswell, they put the tape up and they said, okay, just solo through this or solo over this. And I'm like, okay, let's take a listen. And he said, no, just solo. And he hit record and play and left the room. And I'm listening and playing. I'm like, this is new.
That's freedom. That's some freedom. That's freedom right there,
Yeah.
isn't it?
And he came back in and he goes, how did it go? And I said, you know what? I think it went pretty good. I think it went pretty good. You want to hear it? He goes, no, I know it's good. Let's go to the next one.
Amazing,
And that was one
amazing.
of those solos, is either ease or rise or something. Lydon came in on the at the end, and he listened to everything, and he just said, "It's fucking great, man." You know, and then we went out to dinner, and I enjoyed that so much. He is such a character, man. He's brilliant. He's funny, and he's Lydon, And
Absolutely.
he actually invited me to tour with Pill, but I had other obligations. It would have been fun. It would
Absolutely.
have been
No, it would have
odd
been.
because I had long hair. I was a rock and roller, and that band was a different kind of an audience.
It's a great record, and because of that mix as well, it's incredible. Just thinking of a sort of prototype for the G3. Obviously, that Guitar Legends show that happened. Well, it was a festival, was it, back in '91?
Mhm.
You're part of that with Joe, Brian Mays on there, Nuno Betancourt, all that sort of stuff. It's definitely something that has that sort of G3 energy. When you're playing these songs, though, I think they were all from Passion and Warfare. I'm pretty sure these are all the first time these songs were played.
Yeah.
Can you, apart from like I guess on the Whitesnake tours, you were doing like a solo section and but to actually play them in their entirety, can you talk us through a little bit about your memories of that? Any apprehensions about taking these songs and playing them for the first time?
Well, maybe this is something that's similar with people in my position, where you're going to do a job, and there's certain challenges. Like, okay, you got to get the music to them. You have to know it. You got to own the music. You got to hope that the people that you're going to be playing with know the music. You don't get much rehearsal, and then you got to hope that you got to imagine or deal with all of the moving parts. So that takes up part of your attention. And we got there, and it was great, very well organized. Brian May was the musical director, and he was just perfect at it. Uh, I had a bit of a scare, I remember, because I had sent the band the songs, the names of the songs and the albums they were on. And the drummer learned the wrong song instead of the animal, which wasn't good, because then he didn't have a lot of time to relearn the song. So these are the kinds of things that were going through your head, or to a degree going through my head. How is my guitar amp going to sound? What does the stage look like? Am I going to be able to navigate playing the guitar in a $15,000 uh, suit that's made with crystals and weird, you know what I mean? So there's a portion of your attention that's focused on the moving parts, so to speak. And then there's just the holy mackerel, I'm with all these great musicians, and we're playing in Spain, and it's a guitar festival, and there's Brian May, and there's Joe Walsh, and there's that too. But playing that music, like for the love of God, live for the first time, it was a bit, there was a concern, but I knew it, and I was eager, I was ready. I wanted to play that for people, it was such an impulse to play it. So it was glorious, and it was uh, a bit precarious.
Incredible. Final one, I'll let you go, Steve. For years, there's been this rumor that was going around. It was on, Gear Page and all sorts about Prince, um, apparently wanting you to, or flying you out to do some guitar lessons, or that was what the premise was. And apparently, when you got there to Paisley Park, he had you up on stage and he just sat and watched you. Now, people have kind of debated whether or not this was true, or there's any hint of reality to it, or it's completely false. Is there any truth to that story?
Well, uh, parts of it. Was a huge Prince fan, and my wife's cousin worked at Paisley Park. He was the engineer there forever, he worked for Prince longer than anybody that's worked for him. And whenever I was in Minneapolis, I would try to go over to Paisley Park just to check it out, you know. So we had just done a gig, my band, and after the gig, I went to Paisley Park. I didn't know if Prince was there or anything, you know, and he was there. He was in another room, and it was like 1 a.m. and they called up his band, and these guys were sleeping, and they came in, and we started jamming, and it was just three of us, Michael, Sonny, and me, just jamming, and for a long time, and then they brought Prince's guitar out and microphone and stuff. So I'm figuring, oh, he's going to come, you know, but he never showed up. He was watching it from another room on a video, you know, like a screen. And he may have come if I hung around long enough, but at one point I had to consider getting to the next gig because I had the crew and everything, and a certain amount of hours you need to get to the gig. So I'm like, you know what, I gotta go. I'm so sorry, but and it was hours. You know.
Wow. So you never met him then in the end? You never actually did meet him?
Oh, no, I didn't meet him there. I've met him on several other occasions, but. So then when I said I had to go, he sent somebody down and asked for my phone number. But he never came down. And what the odd thing, the interesting thing was, I finished that tour and it wasn't very much left. And then I flew to Japan, and I went to this, or maybe it was Korea. No, it was Japan, I think. There's this notorious bootleg shop. I think it's called the Blue Note. No, wait, what's it called? It's just this bootleg shop that has like everything, you know? Sure. And I went in there and I saw, first of all, playing in the street on a video, they had a TV in the street, was the jam from Paisley Park that I did. So somehow it got videotaped when I was doing it and bootlegged. Wow. And it was in this store within like a 2 weeks or something, which was a shocker. But something else extraordinary happened at that store. I bought a whole bunch of Prince bootlegs, and I remember going back to my hotel and I'm just laying there looking at all these great Prince bootlegs. And one of them was from Paisley Park, and it had a song on it called Tender Surrender. So I'm thinking, oh, great. You know, Prince came up with a song, he named it Tender Surrender. It's it's a cool name. He'll get credit for it. My song Tender Surrender will, it'll just be for me and my fans, but he picked a cool name. What am I going to do? So I put the headphones on, and all of a sudden I hear dun, 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 something that sounded like Tender Surrender. And I'm like, what? And I look on the CD and it says Tender Surrender by Steve Vai. And I'm like, what? Prince is playing one of my songs? And then I remember I sent him Alien Love Secrets, which has that song on it, like some years before. So I was very excited, and I started running around telling it, banging on doors in the hotel, look, you know. And then I come to find out later, and it's never been really clarified to me, but it's potentially he wasn't playing my song. He was playing a Jimi Hendrix song called Villanova Junction, which are kind of similar, that it's kind of similar also to Carlos Santana's Europa, where it's like a bump and then a melody, but he was playing my chord changes. So I don't know, but that was kind of nice.
Incredible, Steve. It's always incredible chatting with you. Thanks for giving us extra time as well. Look, congratulations on all the new projects, and we can't wait to see you when you're back in the UK.
Thank you. All the best to you. Cheers.
All the best. Thanks. Bye.